Going on, guys, in today's video, I want to talk about iPad OS, I guess 2022 edition. I guess maybe iPad OS 16. I think that's what they're calling it. And I just want to give you my first impressions. I've been using it for about a week, so I just want to talk about some of the features. I want to talk about how Apple is really closing the gap in terms of iPad OS. And I just want to finish up by talking about what's next for iPad OS. So Apple released, I believe, the M1 chip for the iPad in 2021. And I felt to myself, I said, you know what? iPad is not useless anymore. And I don't mean useless in terms of it's not a great product. It's just, for the most part, it wasn't a professional product. It was something that I normally use as I want to say a pacifier for my kids, just to kind of keep them quiet and, just making sure that I could do what I need to do. And the iPad is great for that. I'm sure if you're a parent, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Otherwise, I did feel like iPad OS, they missed the mark by putting this M1 chip in the iPad. I was expecting so much more. But I feel like with iPad OS 16 or 2022, I feel like they've addressed a lot of the issues. One of them that comes to mind is full screen monitor support. It wasn't something that was available with iPad OS 15. Amongst other features that I'll get into a little bit later in the video. But I wanted to kind of talk about closing the gap with Mac OS. An example of that is what they just announced at WWDC this year, which is the Stage Manager. If you're not familiar with the Stage Manager, it's pretty much and I'll put it on the screen here, a multitasking interface, and it's on both. So these features are overlapping. And this is what I mean by closing the gap. But I do feel, at this point, and this is kind of crazy, I feel like at this point with iPad OS 16, I feel like iPad is a better buy. If you think about it, the iPad Air, which has an M1 chip, starts at $600, where the Mac Mini starts at $700. But with the iPad Air, guess what? You don't need any peripherals. You don't need a keyboard or anything to that sort. You just have the touchscreen support, and then you're good to go. Other than that, with iPad OS, I think I feel like iOS has expanded the gap, or has the gap, is it does have cellular support. Now, I do understand that it is $150 premium to have that feature with your iPad. And in terms of, you still have the monthly cost for the cellular. But iPad OS wins because this is now a much more portable device. Now, in terms of features that I promised I would talk about a little bit earlier in the video, I feel like with monitor support, it takes things to the next level. For me, I have a ultrawide monitor, 34-inch, 21:9, and when I plug in my iPad Pro, it fills the whole screen. Before then, it would just be a 4:3 ratio, and you have these black bars on the side, which was ugly and just really was a disappointment when you had that M1 chip. On Apple's website, it says that if you plug in your iPad to, let's say, XDR display, which supports up to 6K, your iPad will work. That's pretty cool. Right now, we're in a beta, so I haven't been able to find any of the settings in the iPad that will kind of allow you to fine-tune the resolution. So maybe that's something that we'll see in the final release. But otherwise, this is just amazing that you have this abundance of features in such a small package that you can pretty much take anywhere. Other than that, some of the early issues that I've seen, and keep in mind this is a beta, is I feel like the resolution is not as sharp when I plug in my iPad, so maybe that's something I'll address. And one other tricky thing that I've not been able to find is my monitor doesn't have any speakers, but when I plug it in, I don't get any audio. So I don't have a way to push the audio to the iPad to use those speakers as the output. Other than that, I want to talk a little bit about how to actually use Stage Manager. So what you have to do is you have to go into control panel like so. Click this button right here. One note to keep in mind, if you do have a full screen app, you won't be able to use Stage Manager. You won't be able to access what I like to call any windows that you may have open on the left-hand side here. I like to call it the backstage. I'm not sure if that's what Apple's calling it, but you won't be able to access that. So you have to minimize the window to some extent to see Stage Manager. Other than that, if you need to group, you can just take one window from the stage and then you can simply just put it on the stage and then you go for those applications or windows. Other than that, some, and this may change as time goes on, some windows or applications don't work. You do have the ability to have 4 items on the stage. I did see a YouTube video, and I probably should follow up with this on, I'll probably put in the notes that you can have 8 items on the stage if you're using a monitor. Other than that, if you need to resize windows, you can just drag the curve angle here, and it seems like it could be on either side, so there's no consistency, but you would just drag it and then you can change the size of the window. Closing windows is not similar to macOS, so there's not a button that you can click to close a window, so it's not very familiar. You would just have to kind of go what I like to call old school, just swipe up and then you can close whatever window that you want to close. Other than that, speaking of old school, this only works on iPads that have the M1 chip. So if you have an A series iPad, like the iPad mini that just came out that has the A15, Stage Manager will not work. And I don't think it's the chip itself, but I do think with these A series processors, like the iPad mini only has 4 gigabytes of RAM. So I think that may be the reason. If you look at most iPads, they have 8 gigabytes of RAM, I think up to 512, and then storage. And then you have the 1 and 2 terabyte iPad, which is crazy, which has 16 gigabytes of RAM. And I also think you need that RAM because I feel like with iPadOS 16, the scaling is just amazing. When you're resizing the apps, the scaling is just great. You do have the ability to have windows overlap each other. Now, one thing I noticed is you can move the windows around, but it's not as freely. They almost kind of pop into place, which is fine. And definitely it's less thinking for me, oh, is this window in the right position? So I think that's great. And, maybe you can use that brain power to take advantage of the feature that is called transcribing documentations, which has been with iPad for a while, but this kind of takes it to the next level with iOS 16 or iPadOS 16, and you can actually transcribe a document at the same time you're actually typing it, which is really powerful, and that really shows the power of the M1 chip. Also, this is something that you could do on the iPhone, so kind of keep that in mind. And overall, the accuracy is really good. I would say it's about 90%, and for many, I guess for the last year, I've been using an application called Otter, and I've actually transitioned away from it. It's a third-party app that you can get in the App Store for iOS. And I think if you team this up with, let's say, a Magic Keyboard, you can be very, very productive. Real quick, what's next? I think with iPadOS, you're going to see macOS app support. And what I mean by that is Final Cut Pro. Those heavy-duty apps that are on macOS, you're going to start seeing coming to iPadOS within the next, I'd say, year. So maybe with iPadOS 17. And I think you'll start seeing the ability, and actually Samsung has been doing this for a while, is you'll be able to use your iPhone and plug it into a monitor, and it will act as a computer almost, which is kind of cool. Other than that, just wanted to finish up. I think I'll be using my iPad more because I have that full monitor support, and I can resize the windows, and I have a Stage Manager. And, I can use that and take advantage of the thousands of apps that are available on the iPad. I feel at this point, just to pick on Google a little bit, I feel like Android tablets are dead at this point, with the refinements that Apple has made to their iPad OS. It's just amazing. And I feel like Android tablets need to retire. Plus, iPad or Apple has about 50% of the market share, which is crazy from something I read from 2021. Otherwise, that is all I have with my impressions. I really appreciate you guys watching to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more from Apple Fan Dad, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.